Hi, folks. Here we are once again. This is Dustin Michelli with Press Monkey Independent Media, Press Monkey Media. Please come and check us out at pressmonkeymedia.com or Press Monkey on Facebook, Press Monkey Independent Media Group on Facebook as well. Wanted to get back to you with our final installment of The Cost of Paradise, luxury gentrification. I took a little bit of time and did some more research, and like I said, I gave a lot of you folks some stuff to chew on our previous cast on the numbers and stuff like that. You know, the numbers of that there are actually 6 times more empty places in the United States, and growing 6 times more empty and vacant houses than there are homeless people in the United States of America, which is a grotesque thing for the richest, supposedly the richest, best country in the world. So it's one of our parts of our cast of The Cost of Paradise and luxury gentrification. You might say what's luxury gentrification, Dustin? What does that mean? Is that really even a thing? And I'm going to tell you, yes, I believe that it is a thing. I'm living it here in proverbial paradise. We live 50 miles from Aspen, Colorado, the pearl necklace of the privileged, as I've often called it. And we pay some of the highest prices in the United States of America for our rental properties. Not the highest, and I'm not even sure if we're even in the top 10. Honestly, when I did do some research, I did not find our area, strangely enough, even in the top 10, but I know that it's an extreme thing. And then after doing some more research regarding that, I realized that this is a issue that doesn't just affect people who live in tourist industries and high-profile, high-luxury areas. This is something that goes on across the entire country. Gentrification in and of itself, a very well-known thing to happen, to where they supposedly improve areas of despair and or poverty and in order to make the place better. But really what they end up doing is causing inflation of prices in those areas. Here in this particular area, we have a booming construction industry that continuously builds luxury housing, luxury apartments, but fails to serve the needs of the working class people who, strangely enough, don't make very much more than anybody else across the country. I typically make $25,000 to $30,000 a year. Most people I know might make 30 to 35, maybe a little bit more than that a year. That's not really even middle class, folks. And we pay upwards of, $1,200 for a 1-bedroom apartment is not unheard of in this area at all. $900 for a studio apartment is not unheard of in this area at all. In fact, pretty common. People, all in all, have been doing the best they can to continuously raise the prices or keep these prices inflated. There are a lot of empty places here, and more places gradually being built. I should amend that, I've said before that there's a surplus of real estate in this area, and there's a surplus, especially of commercial real estate. And I believe that whenever there's a surplus of anything, conceptually, the prices should go down, right? Well, now there's a growing surplus of luxury estates, houses that are just going empty. There's even some vacant and abandoned places, here in this area. All of these things not serving the greater good, not serving people, and certainly not helping mitigate our crisis, our housing crisis in the United States of America. They continuously seem to want to increase the prices of real estate, increase their profit margins in their real estate realms, especially large real estate firms and things like that, large and small. They're all making this gobsmacking amount of money trading all this real estate back and forth as commodities when most of us can't even afford it. You know of anybody who needs luxury housing? I don't need luxury housing. I mean, sure, a lot of people would think, oh, that would be great. To me, that just seems like a big bunch of more stuff to take care of and concern myself with. And really, most people like myself, all we want is just enough room to live and let our families grow and to scratch our living from the piece of property that we have. Most of us cannot do that. Most of us rent. We rent property either in apartment complexes, trailer complexes, even many people rent out spaces made out of other people's houses. We got a lot of chopped up houses here in the Roaring Fork Valley, close to Aspen. We've also got a lot of houses that are makeshift, that are made into commercial housing, which is a strange thing to me. We're dealing with a housing crisis, yet they allow regular houses to be turned into a commercial property rather than it being reserved for having a real estate as residential. So these are some of the things I wanted to address. We addressed this before, and what I mean by gentrification, luxury gentrification, is that they continuously build more and more luxury things here, more and more things that people can't afford, even the affordable housing. And there's an article in the Post-Independent recently on September 3rd outlining some of the new supposed they call it affordable housing, and it's laughable because they tell you, oh, sweat equity will knock some of that down, and these properties are going to be going from anywhere from $270,000 to $350,000. Now, I don't know about you, but that I can't afford that. I don't know who's that affordable for, except for people who already have money and don't really need the help that much. That's not really that affordable for regular people. I mentioned before that me and my family actually applied for affordable housing, and I didn't make enough. In this scenario, it would most likely be the same. They're $270,000 to $350,000 is not affordable. It seems like if you're going to call something affordable housing, then the key component of that affordable housing should be that it's, affordable. And that's not affordable for most people who make $25,000 to $30,000 to $35,000 a year, which is half of working Americans. Half of working Americans only make $35,000 or less a year. So how is any of that affordable? In this area, prices are going to be inflated, but that's not even necessary. There's no necessity for inflated pricing in this area. There's just none. I've mentioned before that the amount of people homeless here in this area, and there are several, I don't know how many exactly. I see them all the time. There has to be at least in the entire valley area more than 100 of them, maybe less, But it seems like that we could easily afford to apportion off a little piece of property and put old trailers on those and give them the bare minimal of running water, electricity, and heat for humanitarian reasons, and have these people be safe and okay. The place that I rent is actually an awful little trailer that I'm running behind paying rent on. We pay actually one of the lowest rents in this entire area. At the end of the day, we pay about $950 to $1,000 a month, including my utilities, for what they call a 2-bedroom trailer. The electricity does not work in half of my trailer. This is a very old trailer that probably would not be up to code, but we need to live there for another year anyhow, so we're going to go ahead and bear through it. Not to tell you all folks about where I'm at, just so you know that I'm where many of you folks are at. I'm on the verge of being handed an eviction notice at any time. I'm on the verge of just like everybody else. So I'm not out there just trying to to drum up support, I'm there with my brothers and sisters, my working class brothers and sisters, who are struggling. And the reason why many of them are struggling, most of them are struggling, in my opinion, is because of the housing crisis. The cost of housing, it prevents most people's upward mobility, in my opinion. Now, there's a lot of things you might say, what's to be done about that, mister? And I've mentioned a couple ideas before, and I'm going to lay some of that down for you again. As I've mentioned before, there used to be things called Homestead Acts. The Homestead Acts gradually turned into grazing acts, basically, that you've seen happening across Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and other places that the Bundy clan was part of, actually exploiting that system, exploiting public lands for the grazing of their cattle, so they can make a profit, and then not wanting to pay their taxes on. So this is another problem. And they acted like they owned the entirety of the land for some reason. I just don't get the mentality of people with this. So what's to be done about it? A Housing Act, Affordable Housing Act. Actually, I have to give my wife, Isadora, credit for coming up with the acronym. Not really the acronym. She came up with the actual idea, the refinement of it, and I've mentioned it being a renter's bill of rights before, but that's not really quite accurate. And I mentioned that, well, I'll figure out a way to refine that a little bit. Well, she helped me out and said, what you're talking about is a residence bill of rights, and she's absolutely right. A Residence Bill of Rights. And this Residence Bill of Rights would obviously entail rent control, very strict rent control, real estate price control, which would be a very important aspect of making sure everybody gets a chance at fair housing. These things are all possible. A federal land grant guarantee and or voucher that would help you exchange that supposed money to put a down payment on or help pay for your house that you have in the urban areas or suburban areas. These are all conceptual ideas that are put out there. The acronym would be RBOR, or maybe the Robber Act. I don't know what to really call it. It can't be the Arbor Act. It doesn't really make sense. But these are all concepts that I've been trying to get people on board with. This is going to include a matter of action in order to get going forward with this. In my opinion, the only way to really move the ball forward on this might be a renters and mortgage strike. And I know that scares people to think about it because they're like, you're just going to get a whole bunch of people evicted and out on the street and everything. And who knows what the action might actually entail. Who knows what it all might entail. But I do believe that we need to make sure that, well, frankly, that the real estate industry needs to bottom out. All mortgages need to become toxic mortgages. There is a surplus out there to be had. When you think of all the empty trailers, all the empty, and I'm not just mobile homes, RVs, old ones, that I've seen old ones that sit out in lots and just sit there that could serve no purpose other than to house some poor person, other than to put a roof over some poor person's head. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with our society that we can't accept the notion like that? I've heard many people complain when I've mentioned things like rent control, federal land guarantees, all of these things. They're like, well, you're talking about entitlements. And no, I don't think so. Actually, I'm talking, in a sense, if it's for the purpose of helping people, I'm okay with entitlements. But the nobody could feel more entitled than those who think that they can own multiple pieces of property and charge other people to be there, charge them half or sometimes more of what they make coming out of their livelihood to be there. So our system is really messed up with that. The concept of land ownership needs to be reevaluated and refined here in this country to better suit people rather than places. I am also, a big part of that is going to be breaking up the big farms, and I've mentioned this before in a previous cast. And the more I've hunted that down, the more true it becomes. Obviously, big agriculture is not a boon for us here in this country or the people of the world. We throw away half of the food that we produce just to keep prices up. So we overproduce food, and we've got GMO crop problems that are directly being influenced by our government and by the GMO companies being in the pocket with the government in order to do this. We need to break up big farms, hand them out to small farmstead groups of people. There's a lot of people in this country who finally have seen that, you know what? Farming isn't the hardest job in the world, and we do want to be more in touch with the land that we're on, and we do want to be more in touch with the food that's being produced, and we do want to be stewards over the land that we're on. So, again, I'm not really sure how far we can take this, but I think the Residence Bill of Rights has legs. I think it has potential. I think that if we all stand together and talk about it and discuss it and refine what it is that we want out of this as a people, then we might be able to figure out a way to approach getting it. You know, as I mentioned, sometimes extreme action might be able to be taken, might need to be taken. You know, sometimes protests are difficult. You know, standing up to landlords and land barons and real estate conglomerates and things like that is scary because they're super powerful. And the reason why I know how powerful they are is because subconsciously we know how powerful they are. Every time I've mentioned this to sometimes even average people, they get scared, they get woozy, they get, oh my gosh, you know, if you do that, then that's really going to really piss them off. Yeah, it'll put them in check. It'll get their attention. You know, this is what we need to do, though. You know, we need to redistribute the gains of our prosperity to the people and quit handing out to the top 10%. You know, some people call it the top 1%. I call it the top 10% because, you know, that top 1% couldn't be there without their sub-managers basically making their arguments for them, doing all their legwork for them. So yeah, again, the Residence Bill of Rights, I think it has legs. I think it has potential as a movement. I hope that you all help get on board with it. As I've talked about here, the cost of paradise here in the Roaring Fork Valley, close to Aspen, Colorado, we feel your pain. We feel a lot of the same things that you feel as workers out there. We don't have unions. We have lots of regular working folk who struggle and pay half of their money out and more just to have a roof over their heads. This isn't right. You know, there's no reason for it. We've got a surplus of land. We've got a surplus of material. We've got a surplus sometimes of even housing. If you count all the empty trailers, if you count all the empty RVs, if you count all the empty apartment complexes in every major metropolitan city I've ever been in, then there's enough room for every single person to have a roof over their head for a nominal amount of money, if any at all. So, rent is theft in this country. When you've created a surplus of something, prices are supposed to go down, not continuously climb. That's what we have in this country. We have prices that are continuously climbing, properties that are going abandoned, large apartment complexes that are sitting there as commodities, empty, while homeless people struggle, while people continuously lose their homes every year just trying to keep up and pay rent. So this is Dustin Michelli signing off with you, my friends, my fellow primates. Once again, this is a movement that it's going to come back up in many of my casts, so I'm going to bring this up again because it's important to me. But I wanted to reach out to you one last time, my final cast on the cost of paradise, because we all live in our proverbial hell or paradise, depending on where you want to be or where you don't want to be. But we're all paying the cost, and there's somebody gaining, and it's not us. So, once again, I sign off. Peace, activism, truth, and bananas.